Pussycat. Hope you're having a good day. I am. Meow. So, Panhandle Prepper made a casual comment back to me on a video of his, which is linked somewhere in the video. And it was an interesting comment. I want to talk about it because I think talking about stuff's good. He said, and this is a direct quote, "There is a difference between prepping and sustainable living." Smiley face. I don't think there is. I don't think prepping is prepping unless it's designed to be sustainable. Now, right off the bat, we have to differentiate what prepping is and what prepping isn't, and we can use dictionary definitions. Prepping, the action or process of preparing something or preparing for something. Now, the North American version of prepping is the practice of making active preparations for a possible catastrophic disaster or emergency, typically by stockpiling food, ammunition and other supplies. Quote, to use prepping in its sentence, "Prepping is a way of life and there is always something new to learn, tasks to do and gear to purchase." Indeed, purchasing gear seems to be a major preoccupation of the preppers. Now, I believe prepping and sustainable living are the same thing, and I'll explain why. If you are prepping for a short-term emergency situation like a car crash or a little bit of flooding in your local area or an ice storm or a power outage for a week or two or for unemployment or anything like that, then you are not prepping for a catastrophic disaster that affects large numbers of people. But maybe you should be. For the simple reason is that prepping is to prepare for a catastrophe. So how do you best prepare for a catastrophe? Now, the definition for North America is learn stuff, do things, and buy gear. In other words, stockpile. Now, before I get into this too much further, let's look at survivalism. Survivalism is primarily an American movement of individuals or groups who are actively preparing for emergencies, including possible disruptions in social or political order, on scales from local to international. So those definitions are pretty similar. And what is sustainable living? Sustainable living is a lifestyle that attempts to reduce an individual or society's use of the Earth's natural resources and personal resources. Practitioners of sustainable living often attempt to reduce their carbon footprint by altering methods of transport, energy consumption and diet. Well, there you go. How can you prep for a long-term societal disruption if your ways of living now and in the disruptive period, hey bear, are actually not sustainable? If you have stocks of food, you could theoretically have enough food stored in tins and mylar bags and 55-gallon little buckets buried in the ground. You could indeed have food to supply yourself with all your nutritional needs for like decades. In reality, if you try that approach, you probably end up quite sick or unhealthy, and you're also not sustainable. You are dependent upon your food stocks and nothing else. If you depend only on your food stocks, you haven't prepped for a failure of the food stocks. So by sustainable living, by actually living sustainably in the now, you should in theory reduce your economic impact on the environment and free up economic and physical activity to actually learn the skills that you have to use in SHTF. So if you are practicing a sustainable lifestyle, if you are sewing buttons back on shirts that you get from second-hand stores, if you are getting the majority of your gear from second-hand stores, you are actually probably going to be learning skills that will help you well in SHTF. Now if you're just buying Columbia jackets and, hello kids, Columbia jackets and camo gear from the ex-army surplus store, but you can't sew a button on it and you can't fix it if the zipper breaks, you're not living sustainably. You are dependent upon the gear and the equipment and the supplies that you have in the now. Given SHTF's unknowable nature, if you don't have the ability to grow carrots and squash and sprouts, if you don't have the ability to catch fish sustainably, if you don't have the ability to catch a deer and moose and bear sustainably, if you cannot exist sustainably in your local environment, you will die. It's a law of nature. You are either in balance with your environment, hopefully generating a surplus for the bad months, the bad years, or you're not. And if you're not bringing in more calories than you need to eat, if you're bringing in less calories than you need to eat, you have to have a surplus, or you have to be given those calories from other people's labour. Now in North America we get our calories and our energy from other people's labour. Mostly. We might not think of it in those terms, but the less developed parts of the world exist, so we can take raw resources easier than we can take them from where we are, and we can use their labour inputs in our capitalist system to do things. Now that's not sustainable, because at some point the people providing their free labour or their reduced cost labour for us will stop doing so. They'll either stop doing so because they become like us and find other people or robots to be dependent on, or they will get fed up of it and they will engage in warfare, either actual warfare or economic warfare. So if you are prepping for sustainability, you are prepping to survive any catastrophe. If you are prepping to survive specific, discrete, catastrophic events like EMP from North Korea, you probably are not prepping sustainably. You might have solar lights, you might have tin food, but your practices of being means that you are a power pig in the now. You're dependent on certain aspects of our modern technology that are not sustainable. They take more energy to use and manufacture than they can ever possibly replace into the earth, and at some point they remove. Now the classic example of this is car driving. I am probably one of the few people of my age group that I know who have never bothered to learn to drive. I've never had a particular need to learn to drive, and now I use Kitty Cat's taxi service and subsidise the car and the rest of it. So I'm kind of indirectly car dependent. But a lot of preppers have unsustainable bug out plans. Their unsustainable bug out plan is to get in a car and drive from their house to where they're going. And even worse, a lot of those preppers actually tend to drive around in their cars, collecting family members, and then drive to the bug out location. That's not sustainable. What is sustainable is using a bicycle or walking or using a kayak to go as a mode of transport in grid down. There are preppers storing hundreds of gallons of gasoline. They cannot conceptualize a lifestyle where car driving isn't just rare, it's non-existent. These same preppers often criticize the youth of today because they claim the youth today cannot conceptualize living without the internet, whilst they themselves tend to be dependent on gasoline and dependent on the internet. So you have to prep and live sustainably in grid down. Once you get imbalanced in grid down, when there is nobody else and no economic system and no societal supports around you to provide you with the calorie and the inputs that you have not stored or you cannot personally reusably regenerate from your local environment, you become unbalanced, and that will cause catastrophic failure at some point of your life. You have to prep with a vision of being sustainable. Now the car's an easy target. Let's look at a different thing. Let's look at fats. We have no problem getting fats now. There's a huge dairy industry out there, specifically extracting fat from gone off breast milk from cows and putting it into all the foods it can find to get rid of it, because people think drinking skim milk and skim yogurt's healthy, which it clearly is not. But you know what, marketing rules and people don't investigate, and if they do investigate they put blinkers on and they try not to see what they're doing to themselves because, well, I need the yogurt, yogurt's good, Greek yogurt's healthy, where in fact it's actually devastating to the human body. But in grid down, in large parts of northern North America, I'm not talking about California where you can grow avocados, the only fat sources you're going to have, realistically, in large amounts, are going to be black walnuts, acorns, bear, and moose. Deer, raccoons, squirrels, porcupine to some degree, won't really carry enough fat on them to give you, the human being living sustainably off that environment in grid down, the fat you need to live. You're going to be processing a lot of nuts. You're going to be desperately trying to catch, kill bears and moose, which even in the gasoline era we live in now, with hideously incompetent things hunters do, like setting out bait and hiding in huts and waiting for the prey to come to the food and they can then shoot them. In grid down, you won't be able to move around very easily in the wilds, and for parts of the year because of snow you won't be able to really move around a hunt at all in any realistically sustainable way. The calories that you will push out to do that probably will not be replaced by the calories that you're going to be able to bring in. So if you aren't prepping sustainably, you're not prepping. What you're doing is you're hoarding calories and gear to save calories for a rainy day or rainy weeks or rainy months or even rainy years. But at some point that hoarding, that supplies, will either be compromised, as the Americans like to claim all the time, which is why they need their guns to stop other people with guns taking their stuff, because they can't envision not using guns to defend themselves or attack even. Interesting concepts. But anyway, that's a bit of a digression. But you have to have a sustainable input of calories and work that you can sustainably do. You have to have a buffer. You have to have producing more calories than you're using over the course of the year. Or over time, the imbalance will come. You will get sick, you'll break your leg, you'll hurt your ankle, you'll catch the flu. There will be a catastrophic volcano during grid down, and there will be no growing season. Without supplies, you are not prepping sustainably. By prepping only with supplies, you are not prepping sustainably. So I hope that kind of makes sense. I doubt it does. But it was just a frivolous little conversation with Panhandle, and do check his channel out. But I firmly believe that you cannot prep for long-term catastrophic events by living an unsustainable life. And indeed there's large arguments that living an unsustainable life is going to cause a catastrophic event. So think about where your calories are coming from, what the materials and gear that you buy and watch and drink, where those calories are coming from to supply you with what you need. A large number of people think beef is grown in packets and then arrives in grocery stores. People don't conceptualize the stunning of the cow and the stripping of the flesh and the washing off the feces from the inside of the rendered cow and the chopping and the grinding that goes on. They can't anymore conceptualize that. Excess gasoline calories and technology have moved them away from production of their calories to a point where the production doesn't even dawn on them. People will literally go into stores and buy a container of water in plastic that's leaching BPA into the water. The plastic's going to last 10 to 20,000 years. Think nothing of it. They don't see where the calories are being wasted and where they're coming from. And as long as they can keep buying those bottles of water, they've prepped with water. But at some point, that will kill them. You have to be able to treat and process water, fats, calories, fibre and proteins in grid down in ways that are self-sustainable. The calories that you put out have to be less than the calories you can take in. This is why a lot of preppers online are pushing hard for you guys to start gardening and seed saving. Agriculture is what will save you and make you self-sustainable, living sustainably in grid down. Tins of ravioli, hoping to shoot animals and assuming there'll be enough of them there and there won't be other people shooting back at you for trying to shoot their animals, isn't going to be a sustainable way of living. It will have an important part of the sustainable way of living. But agriculture, whether it's animal agriculture, plant agriculture, or aquaponics, that is what you need to be focusing on. Have enough food for 3 months, have enough water for 3 months. By all means, prep for the most common SHTFs, no problem. But if you truly believe that you are a prepper, you are prepping for catastrophic ongoing events, as well as the little stuff. And if you're not prepared to do that in a sustainable way, if your whole plan is to have 6 months or a year's worth of MREs or mountain house, you are asking for major problems once the catastrophe goes on for more than that period of time. Foraging. Everybody will be foraging. There isn't that many calories out there in large parts of North America to forage. That is a myth. What there is out there is soil. And using our brains and using some technology, we can store water to provide agriculture. We can store the agricultural products for 6 months to a year, and then we can be sustainable. But in modern terms, we're not sustainable. All of our societies right now are using gasoline and gas and chemicals and metals and animals and plants in totally unsustainable ways. And we all know it. The water is becoming rarer and rarer and more polluted. The soil is blowing away more and more than is being produced. We all know this. We all know that we're living an unsustainable life. And to live a sustainable life is almost impossible for me to even conceptualize. But in SHTF, I'm going to have to. I'm going to have to be dependent on my own calorie production. And the people around me, trade's important, but there won't be that many people around me and there won't be that many people close to me that will support me if I stumble. Anyway, bit of a downer conversation. Not sure if I'm going to put this up on the interwebs or not, but I'll see. Au revoir. If this never makes it to air, I'm saying goodbye myself. Toodles. Au revoir, Hoovles.